Well, today, state officials in Ohio are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to consider an ongoing legal battle over new voter registrations. NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us to break it all down. And Pete, tell us what's going on in the state of Ohio.
Okay, this is over a law that was passed after the election debacle in Florida in 2000. It's called the Help America Vote Act. And what it says is that in every state, the election officials, Secretary of State usually, has to compare the voter registration database with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles database, the driver's license information, and report any mismatches to county officials. Now, they started doing that in Ohio, but at some point they stopped. And this has been going on for a while, but just about a month ago, the Republicans filed a lawsuit and said, look, the Secretary of State's got to do this. She was coming up with this plan that said you could vote absentee and register at the same time. They said this is going to be mischief. She is not doing this right. She has to start doing this concordance with the lists. And this has been bouncing back and forth in the lower federal courts. And just last night, the federal appeals court that controls Ohio said, you know, Republicans, you're right, the Secretary of State's got to do this. So she went to the U.S. Supreme Court and said, please, put a stop to this whole thing. Now, here's what the Secretary of State says. Number one, she says, we've been using this system for the last 2 years. It was used in the 2006 general election and in this spring's primary in Ohio. So why are the Republicans just coming along now? Secondly, she says, there's a separate provision in federal law that says you can't purge the voter registration lists fewer than 90 days before an election. Finally, she says this would cause great confusion. Voter registration is not only happening, but so is absentee voting. And to change the rules now in the middle of all this would be very confusing.
Well, what about that this could be an effort to suppress votes?
Well, here's the thing. If the lower court ruling stands and the Secretary of State has to do this, at the very most, it wouldn't prevent anyone from voting. If Norah O'Donnell goes into the polling place in Cleveland and they say, you know, there's a mismatch here between the voter registration list and the driver's license list, you could still vote. You would cast what's called a provisional ballot, and then they would count it. They would check later and see if you were qualified. What the opponents of this system say is that whenever you do this provisional ballot things, inevitably there are problems in the databases and some of those votes don't count, and they say this is an attempt to try to suppress Democratic votes.
Pete, we're also hearing about the FBI launching an investigation into the community activist group Acorn. What can you tell us about that?
Well, launching an investigation is probably a little grand way to say it. They will conduct an investigation, and they will do the absolute minimum now before the election. They'll do whatever it takes to preserve evidence, but they don't want to do anything that would get them accused of trying to influence the election in any way. So they're frankly, I think, a little embarrassed that this word has come out. But you know, that's the fact. They are going to investigate it in the least intrusive way possible.
Well, if John McCain or Barack Obama does not win this race by a big margin, we are going to.
We're going to be here a lot more.
We're going to be here a lot more. And
I'll get a room.
Pete, you are going to be a very busy man. Right. So we will see.
Okay.
We will see. Pete Williams, thank you very much. We appreciate it.